Imagine a world where the very essence of human civilization seemed on the brink of collapse, where nations fell to ruthless conquerors and cities were reduced to rubble. A world where the forces of darkness tried to extinguish the light of freedom. This was the reality of World War II, a conflict that not only changed the shape of the world but also redefined the future of humanity. In a mere 6 years, nations, ideologies, and millions of lives were impacted in ways that continue to resonate across generations. But what drove the world to this point? And how did the war ultimately reshape the world? Before we delve into the heart of World War II, if you're interested in this story and want more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Your support is crucial, and we're on our way to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Your subscription ensures more in-depth discussions like this, and it would mean the world to us. To understand how World War II erupted, we must first look at the turbulent years that preceded it. The roots of the conflict lie in the unresolved consequences of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, created harsh terms for Germany, punishing it severely with territorial losses, military restrictions, and the burden of heavy reparations. These terms sowed deep resentment in Germany, and as economic hardship gripped the nation, Adolf Hitler rose to power, promising to restore Germany to its former glory and challenge the very foundation of the post-World War I order. Hitler's rise to power in 1933 marked the beginning of a new chapter in Germany's history. He capitalized on the widespread discontent with the Treaty of Versailles, as well as the global economic depression. With his charisma and radical ideas, Hitler consolidated power, establishing a totalitarian regime that sought to expand Germany's borders and establish a racially pure society. His ultimate goal was to dominate Europe, and to do this, he needed to challenge the fragile peace that existed between nations. While Germany began to militarize and build its war machine, the world remained largely indifferent. The League of Nations, an international organization created after World War I to prevent future conflicts, was too weak to hold aggressive powers in check. Meanwhile, Japan had already begun its own military expansion, invading Manchuria in 1931, and Italy had launched its invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. Despite these clear signs of aggression, the world largely failed to act. The policy of appeasement pursued by Britain and France in an attempt to avoid another war allowed Hitler to annex Austria in 1938 and demand the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia, without facing significant opposition. By the time Hitler invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, it was clear that the appeasement strategy had failed. Britain and France, realizing that further concessions would lead to disaster, declared war on Germany, marking the official beginning of World War II. The first phase of World War II saw the rapid expansion of the Nazi Empire across Europe. Germany's military strategy, known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, was characterized by fast, overwhelming attacks that combined the power of tanks, infantry, and air superiority. Blitzkrieg proved to be highly effective, and within weeks, Poland had been defeated and much of Eastern Europe was under German control. After Poland, Germany turned its sights on France. By May 1940, the German army had launched a surprise invasion through Belgium, bypassing the heavily fortified Maginot Line along the French border. The speed and effectiveness of the German assault stunned the French and British forces. Within a month, France was forced to surrender, and the German occupation of much of Western Europe began. During the same period, the British were left to fend for themselves. The Battle of Britain, fought in the summer and fall of 1940, was a key turning point. The Luftwaffe, German Air Force, attempted to destroy Britain's air defenses and pave the way for a potential invasion. However, the British Royal Air Force, RAF, with the aid of innovative radar technology, was able to repel the Luftwaffe. The bravery of British pilots, who fought day after day to protect their homeland, became a symbol of defiance and determination in the face of Nazi aggression. Meanwhile, Italy, led by Benito Mussolini, launched military campaigns in North Africa and the Balkans, hoping to expand its fascist empire. However, these campaigns faltered, and Italy's military struggles were a source of tension between Mussolini and Hitler. Germany had to intervene to prop up Mussolini's failing campaigns, particularly in North Africa, where the German Afrika Korps, led by General Erwin Rommel, fought against the British for control of key territories in the region. Although the United States had adopted a policy of neutrality during the early years of the war, its involvement was critical to turning the tide in favor of the Allies. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt had long been sympathetic to the plight of Britain and France, and under the Lend-Lease Act of 1941, the United States began providing military aid, supplies, and equipment to the Allies. However, it was the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan on December 7, 1941, that drew the United States into the war. The Japanese bombing of the U.S. naval base in Hawaii resulted in the deaths of over 2,400 Americans and the destruction of much of the Pacific Fleet. In response, President Roosevelt declared war on Japan the following day. Germany and Italy, in support of their ally Japan, declared war on the United States, bringing the U.S. into the global conflict. The United States, with its vast industrial resources, became the arsenal of democracy, providing the Allies with vital supplies, including weapons, ammunition, and food. The U.S. military also became a formidable fighting force, deploying millions of soldiers to both the European and Pacific theaters of war. The American entry into the war marked a turning point, as it provided the Allies with the resources and manpower needed to confront and eventually defeat the Axis powers. The turning point in the war came in 1942 with two key battles that altered the course of history: the Battle of Midway and the Battle of Stalingrad. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway, fought in June 1942, was a decisive naval engagement between the United States and Japan. The United States, using intelligence gathered through code-breaking, was able to ambush and destroy much of the Japanese fleet. The loss of 4 Japanese aircraft carriers severely weakened Japan's naval power, and the battle marked the beginning of the United States' push to retake the Pacific Islands. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted from 1942 to 1943, was one of the most brutal and pivotal battles of the war. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, mounted a fierce defense against the German invasion of the city, turning the tide of the war in the east. The German defeat at Stalingrad marked the first major setback for Hitler's army and marked the beginning of a Soviet counteroffensive that would push German forces back toward Berlin. In North Africa, the Allied forces, led by General Bernard Montgomery from Britain and General Dwight D. Eisenhower from the United States, defeated the German Afrika Korps at the Battle of El Alamein in late 1942. This victory cleared the way for the Allies to launch an invasion of Italy, further weakening the Axis position in Europe. The most significant Allied operation in Western Europe occurred on June 6, 1944, with the launch of Operation Overlord, better known as D-Day. The Allied forces, comprising American, British, Canadian, and Free French troops, launched a massive amphibious assault on the beaches of Normandy, France. The landings, which involved over 156,000 troops and thousands of ships and aircraft, were the largest invasion in history. The success of the D-Day landings was a turning point in the war. It opened up a second front against Nazi Germany and marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. Within weeks, Allied forces had liberated Paris, and by the end of the summer, the Allies were advancing into Belgium and the Netherlands. The relentless pressure from both the eastern and western fronts left Germany no choice but to retreat. As the Allies pushed deeper into Germany, they encountered the full horror of the Nazi regime. The discovery of concentration camps, such as Auschwitz, revealed the extent of the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, were systematically murdered by the Nazis. The liberation of these camps was a sobering reminder of the cruelty and inhumanity that had been perpetrated during the war. As Allied forces closed in on Berlin, Adolf Hitler realized that defeat was inevitable. On April 30, 1945, as Soviet forces closed in on the capital, Hitler took his own life in his underground bunker. Germany unconditionally surrendered on May 7, 1945, marking the end of the war in Europe. However, the war in the Pacific continued. The United States, after a series of brutal island-hopping campaigns, had captured key islands that brought them closer to Japan's home islands. But Japan refused to surrender. To avoid a costly invasion and bring the war to a swift conclusion, the United States made the unprecedented decision to use atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The bombings killed an estimated 200,000 people, many of them civilians, and forced Japan to surrender on August 15, 1945, bringing World War II to an official close. The conclusion of World War II brought with it a profound transformation in the global order. Europe lay in ruins, and much of Asia had been devastated by years of war. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as the world's two superpowers, each with competing ideologies: capitalism and democracy versus communism and totalitarianism. This ideological divide would lead to the Cold War, a period of political tension, military rivalry, and proxy wars that lasted for much of the second half of the 20th century. The war also led to the establishment of the United Nations in 1945, an international organization created to prevent future conflicts and promote peace and cooperation among nations. However, the shadow of World War II would continue to cast its long influence on the world for decades to come. World War II had profound effects on society and culture. The war mobilized entire nations, led to groundbreaking technological advancements, and changed social dynamics in unprecedented ways. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers as men went off to fight, and many of them remained in the workforce even after the war ended. This shift in gender roles would lay the groundwork for the feminist movements of the 1960s and beyond. The war also led to significant changes in racial and civil rights issues. African Americans, who served in large numbers during the war, returned to the United States demanding equality and justice. Their experiences abroad and the horrors of the Holocaust fueled movements for civil rights and social change, particularly in the United States. World War II remains one of the most pivotal moments in human history. Its consequences shaped the political, social, and economic realities of the modern world. The lessons learned from this devastating conflict about the dangers of unchecked aggression, the importance of diplomacy, and the need for global cooperation continue to guide international relations and policies today. As we reflect on the events of World War II, we honor the sacrifices of those who fought and died, and we must work to ensure that the horrors of that war are never repeated. The struggle for peace, justice, and human dignity remains as important as ever. Thank you for joining me on this in-depth exploration of World War II and its lasting impact. If you enjoyed this comprehensive journey through one of the most transformative periods in history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We are working toward 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us continue to bring you thoughtful, in-depth content like this. Stay tuned for more, and let's learn from history to build a better future.